Well, G Martian, uh,
G Martian.
welcome to all the Sedalians jumping in the chat. Um, let's get started. We're recording, so I'll be able to drop this back for everyone. Joined by Peter, CEO and Head of Marketing, Matt. We're going to talk everything mainnet, SEDA secure state verification, 500K routes, liveness guarantees, interrupt 3.0, unbundling oracles, and billions in monthly bridge volume. Who's excited? I certainly am. I want to kick off by congratulating Matt for his 1 year at SEDA. It's a pretty been a big year, Matt. I don't know if you want to say any words after such a impactful 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. It's been a great 12 months. Loved every second of it, carving out this narrative. But even more excited for recent months, finding kind of what's going to be the driving PMF for SEDA. The biggest tasks in marketing this year has been sort of trialing different narratives. We've talked about it a lot, but seeing which ones stick. And I'm sure Peter and I are going to rip into this today, but seeing the excitement from some of the biggest interrupt players out there, and publicly sharing their excitement, whether that's on our stream yesterday with Nam from Hyperlane, or whether that's you, Peter, in the replies on X, and just seeing people click how powerful SEDA is for interrupt and verification and chain abstraction. It's probably been like the biggest win for my 12 months here. Is like now we have a North Star that has PMF, and the industry is just as excited as we are for it. I'm really excited for what that means for our community, because I can see like a few faces in here, that we've had conversations with over that 12 months, and they've been patiently sort of waiting as we go towards mainnet. And what a better way to go into mainnet with clear PMF and just next level traction on the B2B side. And yeah, I won't go into it anymore because we'll touch into that on the space. But yeah, very, very excited. Great 12 months. It's going to be an even bigger next 12 months.
Yeah, awesome. I think off the back of that, I wanted to talk briefly about community, but I think let's skip that. I'll put it in the end. I'm going to jump to you, Peter. Let's kick off with a bit of a general update. The team's back. We're locked in for 2025. It's Q5. We're on the road to mainnet. Can you give us that brief sort of update of where everything's at, how it's sitting, how we're looking at the moment?
Yeah, I think locked in is a great a great word. I think the team was super busy leading up to the end of the year. Everyone poured the gas on to make sure that we were ready to build the last version of our DevNet before our code freeze and audit. So it was a super big push from the whole team, and I think we started the year super strong altogether. Um, like Matt said, we've started to find our product market fit. This is probably the biggest challenge for any startup, sort of navigating the early, sort of days of your product launch, and sort of, who your customer is going to be. And I think, over the past year, Matt has done a very good job of trying to make sure that, as many people understand the technology state as possible. But now we found a customer base that, has existing traction, existing customers, existing value flowing through, and the product that we've been building can plug directly into that, and is needed, and wanted by developers that are building the interrupt protocols, and developers that are building sort of omni-chain standards on top of them as well. So I think we're super excited for the next couple months. On the engineering side, Jasper unfortunately couldn't make it to this update today. But we're going to be doing, I believe, at the end of the month, right? We do like an engineering recap. Is that correct, Ben?
Yep, that's correct.
Cool. So I'll give like a quick, sort of 30,000-foot view on the engineering timeline. So I would say like Mario may kill me for saying this live, but the sort of internal consensus is that we're like, around like 95 to 99% finished, with all the sort of like the features that we wanted to build before the code freeze. And we already scheduled our audit as well. So we are sort of working now with hard deadlines. So we have our audit. The final date will be announced, but sort of in the first week or two of February, which will be about a 3-week timeline for that audit. And then we'll have to do review and implementation, and then launching our test net. A big thing that's coming up on mainnet is we're going to be launching inflation. So we're going to be submitting a proposal to the network that basically outlines what inflation could be, as everyone knows, or you may not know, inflation was a parameter that exists in the SDK, but we chose to leave off before we launched the sort of full features of data requests and our solver network and overlay network. And so this will be going live to encourage more staking, encourage more token holders to upgrade, since we have the end of our upgrade window for FLX to SEDA coming up here in April at that 1 year mark. So yeah, I mean, the SEDA team's locked in. We are ready to go to mainnet. Super exciting use cases. I actually was thinking about it might be good to do like a quick whiteboard sesh if everyone's up for it in the call. But let me know when you want me to do that. I wanted to do like a quick explanation of how bridging works and how SEDA basically fits in, because I think people may not understand how like an Oracle fits into the bridging landscape. So want to give a quick overview of that on a whiteboard. So let me know when I should do that now or later in the call. But yeah,
I think now's perfect,
ready
because that
to
was
go.
going to transition straight to the sort of current bridge landscape and giving a sort of like for dummies overview. So I think let's transition straight into that.
Great. All right. Sounds good. Let me share my screen really quick. Can everyone on Discord see this?
Yes, perfect.
It's come through.
My Excel draw is up?
Yep, got it.
Cool. Perfect. Great. So yeah, what is a bridge? I'll start with a message-based bridge. I think that's probably like the easiest one, and it's sort of like the most common that people use today. So examples of message-based bridges are things like Hyperlane, things like layer 0. There's a few more like Wormhole as an example. So just to name a few, there's obviously many more, but that's just kind of like a high-level overview. Okay, so how does this work in production? So right now, if you have a protocol like layer 0, and they'd like to pass a message from, let's say, Ethereum to Solana. So you have a smart contract which is built on top of a network. So let's say this is Ethereum. This is a layer 0 bridge contract that sits on top of the origin network. What happens when a user comes in? So a user will send a message to this network. And by the way, if I'm going too fast, let me know, and or feel free to watch this back later in the recording. So, but when a user basically comes to a bridge and they say, I want to transfer $100, from in, let's say, USDC, and this is going to be from ETH to Solana, right? So this user comes in, and what happens is a message is then emitted from this contract. So the message says basically user message is XYZ, and this message needs to be forwarded from Ethereum on the origin network to Solana. So what actually happens is you have this technology that sits in between, which is basically like a middleware, and this is called a relayer. So this relayer has different names and different stacks. On the layer 0 framework, this is called the DVN, or decentralized verifier network. On Hyperlane, this is called a ISM, or I think it's interchain security module. And so it has different names, but it's basically a piece of software that sits in between these two networks and verifies and reads messages from these contracts. So this relayer then says, message XYZ, and this is 100 USDC from ETH to Solana, is then verified and sent as a contract event to the bridge contract on Solana. And then once this bridge contract verifies it from the relayer, it sends the funds to the user on Solana. So the biggest problem with this design today is this relayer is essentially a multi-sig. So in a lot of cases, this is either run by the bridge team themselves. It can be run by like third parties like Chainlink or Google. But in the end, they're either limited in the routes. So as an example, layer 0 supports something like 40 or 50 chains right now with Stargate. Google, which is a great centralized option for relaying messages, supports about 15 chains. So with SEDA, what we're able to do is say every one of these networks that a bridge wants to support will actually deploy a prover contract, which allows this network to which allows basically the chain that sits on to verify the state of SEDA. And then what happens here is when messages are typically relayed to a relayer, instead of that, basically they're relayed to the state approver. And the state approver is monitored then by solvers. And these solvers essentially, and I'll make a new one here so you guys can differentiate. The solver essentially acts as this sort of middleware that forwards the message to SEDA. So here we have solvers that are relaying the message. These solvers then send it to the SEDA network. The SEDA network is then tasked with the execution of data requests. So it's sent to overlay nodes that are selected in a random committee. And these overlay nodes then, talk to a bunch of different data proxies and sources of, data, which are RPCs in this case. So the RPC providers, could be like Helios, it could be Alchemy, it could be Infura, it could be, any quick node, like whatever it may be. And these RPC providers are then providing the chain state data from the origin network back to the target network and the state approver on that network. So basically, rather than having a multi-sig here, which is verifying chain state, you basically have this basic kickback to a decentralized network, which is SEDA. So on top of the SEDA network, you have what we've been calling, what we've been calling this prover contract, interop program. And this interop program essentially has all of the code necessary for interacting and executing these data requests, which are basically chain state verification. So what does this mean in a nutshell? This means that, bridges that are doing, between 20 and 25 billion in monthly volume have one big problem, which is they don't have good decentralized and horizontally scalable verification and settlement. SEDA is purpose-built to basically solve that. So we have extremely good product market fit and very good sort of demand from these bridge and interop teams. We believe chain abstraction will only increase the demand for interop because that means that users are essentially running through interop rather than transacting on the native network themselves, which means that all this demand then has to be settled and verified by someone like SEDA. So that means that SEDA's network demand is bootstrapped and sort of has day zero demand. And so the reason why is if you look at DeFi, if we support a DeFi protocol doing lending on Berachain, we may get 100 price updates per day, which are great. But with something like bridging, you can have sort of a parabolic scaling of transactions. So all of a sudden, instead of 100 sort of transactions per day, you could have millions that are flowing through SEDA. And by plugging into providers like Layer 0 and Hyperlane and Socket and One Balance and Particle Network and Relay and a bunch of other ones, we essentially have day zero bootstrap demand for our network. So this product market fit is super exciting, and we're very excited to see this go live at the end of this quarter. So that's a quick kind of very high level, quick and dirty overview of what a bridge sort of uses SEDA for and why this is important to have. And I've covered this a bit in threads before, but this is kind of a high level of why it's important to have SEDA and how this demand translates into network usage as well.
That was awesome. I think everyone will agree that was very helpful. It's always good to hear it explained again, even if you've read it before. Matt, I know this is something that you've been diving super deep into. You've had some great takes on X, diving into all the interop program, looking into the rest of the ecosystem. How do you what excites you about getting to this point where we've got the interop program live, we've got mainnet live? How do you see us fitting in the broader ecosystem?
I think if anyone was tuning in yesterday to our stream with Hyperlane, which I believe is in the SEDA Calls channel here, you can go back and revisit it. I think the way that it was received by Nam, who's the CTO at Hyperlane, the way that he was talking about the unbundling of the stack, right? This is something like the modular thesis has been playing out. These interop guys, they're such a task in scaling their interop services to all these new chains. I mean, we put out a piece the other day, and estimates from the 4 Pillars article highlighted Equilibrium that could estimate that the L2, L3 landscape by the end of this year could be around 2,000. But right now there's 347 listed on DeFi Llama. So even if that got to like 1,000, like these have such a massive task ahead of them to scale their interop with the services that they're running today to all these new chains as the industry expands. So this natural unbundling of the stacks to just gives way to specialized protocols like SEDA to come in and purpose build these programs. In our case, it's for verification. He listed off a few other categories that'll be unbundling in interop. But what we're seeing now is this emerging of a new market, this emerging of a verification market that sits under interop. And currently there's nobody filling that gap. So the way that we see it is like there's a SEDA-sized hole sitting under interop. And that's why we're getting such clear PMF as we talk about this on X, because everybody sees the need to have a purpose-built system for verification. Because as Peter was saying, the system's great and we've come a long way with bridging, but now it's time to turn the attention inwards in the stack and say, well, what is the system doing behind the scenes? And these 1-to-1 multi-sigs or 2-to-3 multi-sigs, these combinations of multi-sigs that only serve 10% of the chains that people want to get to, they're just not working. There's a few issues around like, collusion on a multi-sig or liveness, like we saw Stargate go down before the end of the year, which is a real testament to the industry of just like how interop is scaling and the demand for cross-chain transactions. So what I see it is SEDA's spearheading the emergence of the verification market, and it's resonating insanely clear with the interop projects that are leading the interop space. And then you times that by, as Peter said, what chain abstraction is going to do, how it's going to expand the need for more transactions, add solvers on top of interop and all of this. There's just a very, very good opportunity, and I'm just very excited that we've already built the tech that can be plugged into Hyperlane Layer 0 and have that day one demand. So I think basically the TLDR there is this big puzzle piece going on, the SEDA shaped jigsaw piece, and we're fitting that plug perfectly.
Yeah,
that's a great way of putting it.
Sorry, Ben. To piggyback off of that really quick as well, like our BD team, Stefan and also Dami have been doing a ton of research into the bridge market landscape, and it's only been growing over the past year. And I think that people kind of have been sleeping on bridge security because it just sort of works. And this is what Nam from Hyperlane was saying yesterday on our live stream, that basically we haven't had a bridge hack in a long time. So people have been kind of ignoring like sort of what the potential damage is. But just to very, very bluntly sum this up, if a relayer is compromised, either in one of the popular message-based stacks or intent-based stacks, they can infinite mint an asset, right? So if you have a rogue multi-sig, a key is compromised, an employee was not having proper OPSEC, all of a sudden you can have an asset like ETH or USDC or whatever the token may be, infinite mint on a chain. And people who have been in the space for a long time remember the wormhole hack around 400 million, the multi-chain hack, the Ronin bridge hack. Like there's been so many that have been compromised over the years that have been covered by rec.com. And I think that people sort of underestimate the security stack. And so it's been kind of like this unsung piece of the market that people say like, okay, well, somebody else will solve this. And nobody has come to solve it. And we realized, early on that SEDA being interoperable and accessible from any chain makes it the perfect stack for verification. And we were talking about this with the Redstone team on Twitter in a thread, like 2025 we'll see the unbundling of oracles, and SEDA has sort of claimed this verification and settlement space that nobody else has actually really looked at. And like Matt said, being able to support any new route and any token is super powerful, and the existing bridges today just can't keep up with the demand, and the relayers only want to deploy where they know they're going to get volume. But with SEDA, it's extremely cost effective to deploy, and bridges are making a lot of money. I mean, some bridges like Across and D-Bridge and things like that, they're making 20, 30, $50 million in annualized revenue from fees. SEDA being able to come in and take a piece of that pie and direct that to network usage is super, super important and exciting for our network.
I think you mentioned in the last call, Peter, that a lot of these bridges don't want to build this security stack. They want this modular decentralization to be able to just plug straight in, right? And that's something that is really appropriate for SEDA coming in at this time, that we have this ability to be modular, to be permissionless, and to just plug right into this setup.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with SEDA as an example, right? I mean, we talked about this with NOM. Like, all developers have to do is change one JSON instance within their implementation of their warp roots and immediately add SEDA, right? And so the ability to scale this and deploy this very quickly after we go live is very easy. And so that's really great for us because we can plug, we really can plug directly into a growing market, and be getting day zero usage. So I mean, as the founder, it's very exciting, right? Like, that's the only thing that you can really wish for is product market fit and that people want what you're building. And we've been building this now for 2 years, and to have some initial signs of really strong demand and traction from builders is super exciting. And we kind of see this as like a wedge, right? So we're launching this as our first kind of flagship product, and we're going to be posting more about this over the next few weeks. And then the exciting part is we also have use cases like Plume and RWA worlds building really cool use cases for real world assets. And we also have other DeFi protocols that are using SEDA to build really cool things as well. So it's really cool that not only do we find sort of like initial product market fit to make sure that the network has early traction and sort of continues to grow with the space, we also then can use that traction and demand to start bolstering up our other use cases and growing there as well. So I'm very excited to have us go live with chain abstraction interop as sort of the core focus for our team.
Yeah, I think the words parabolic growth that you mentioned earlier is going to get everyone excited. Matt, just tagging on, we talked about the unbundling of oracles this year. One of the questions from one of the favorite community members, Mr. Joe, or as I call him, Senor Jose, or Mr. Bullish, is the latest one I've got. It was talking about the Oracle War. You had a really good take on Twitter. You also dropped it in the general chat, but could you just sort of give your quick 2 cents on how you see that this unbundling and really how the players are going to settle?
I think so basically, just like the prelude here is that the guys from Redstone are calling this like the year of the Oracle Wars. I think what people don't realize is that maybe the battle within DeFi is very congested with the Oracle space. You have Pith, you have Chainlink, Redstone tagging in there, and then a few of the other smaller oracles, less known oracles, have been sort of battling for of the price feed oracle, right? Where you have this default data, a set amount of price feeds, and then it's kind of a race to get them to the new chains. But as we all know, that just takes a long time. So it becomes this like silly little battle over a very small slice of the pie. And I don't see it that way. I see kind of more this unbundling, as Peter said, the unbundling of the oracles this year, and people's attention realizing that the oracle space is actually a large surface area, but everyone's just been focusing on a very small slice of that surface area around DeFi. Of course, as we have like chain abstraction coming, as we have interop and the UX increases, and more people coming on chain, of course, we're going to see more and more use cases coming on chain. And then also piggybacking on what Peter said, is there is no dedicated Oracle for verification, state verification, that can span every single chain, any single route, and any VM. So there is no Oracle war. There is who is going to fill that massive gap. I mean, Layer 0 sent 20 million messages last year. Who's going to be the third-party verifier? And if you ever look at that blog that I put in, very, very clear that your Layer 0s and Hyperlanes are aware that they need these specialized verification oracles plug in underneath, because there's just a lot at risk here. So there's no battle there. The SEDA is the only built tailored oracle that can be customized to these different bridges' needs to fill that hole. And then we'll see clear winners come out in the DeFi space. I think the Redstone Oracle guy was very clear that 50% of mindshares dropped in Chainlink, and it's sort of moving over to Pith, but they can have their little battle over there. Redstone can own liquid restaking tokens. Now the market's opening up these emerging opportunities, and it's going to be the oracles can fit these different use cases, alternative use cases that haven't been battled out before, to be the owners of those space. And I would argue, die on this hill, that interop and chain abstraction is arguably going to be the biggest space for oracles to fill in the coming expansion of the market.
Yeah,
Love it.
and just to sorry, Ben, I keep
No, you go,
interrupting
you go.
but just to piggyback on that, I mean, one really cool thing about this product we built is that it's not PvP, right? So the bridges that are building on top of us, they all have their edge and their use case, right? So layer zero and hyperlane and across, like they're all competitive for the end user, right? Intent bridges are also competitive with liquidity, right? So solvers deploying liquidity and supporting their networks, like there's only so much money to go around. And so getting solvers support your network and your routes and your liquidity over another with intent-based bridges, can be a challenge, right? Um, the great thing about SEDA is that we're building this for all the teams. So we're building this as a product that can plug in and provide verifiable, permissionless, and decentralized security and verification for all of these different chains and routes and tokens they want to support. And so, today I will say like our biggest competitor probably is Google. On the verification side, they're the only ones that have really kind of entered the market as like a legitimate player. Currently, they support around 35 routes. Um, with SEDA, we hope to support over 500,000 routes by the end of 2025. On our launch, we'll probably try to support around 30,000 routes, so sort of like the most popular chains to kind of help bootstrap these early bridges. And that's just like a huge difference in scale, right? Having 10 or 11 tokens that you support across 30 routes or having millions of tokens across 30,000 routes, it's a big difference, right? So I think, our team is rightfully confident that this sort of, 100x improvement over the existing competition will be seen, very positively by developers and, bridge providers in the space. Because in the end, essentially you're trusting your entire business to a centralized third party. And obfuscating that risk might sound great because you say, okay, it's Google, like they're a trusted party, but they can also, act in a way that may harm the network. I mean, it's not they can also make a mistake as a centralized provider. The great thing that Matt mentioned is that SEDA is a network, right? So we have liveness guarantees. If a data request is submitted and it's paid for, it's going to get executed, even if it may be delayed because we exceed 10,000 transactions per second, and we actually have 50,000 because we're getting a ton of demand, and we start building SEDA L2s right ourselves. In the end, like this is a great problem to have, but in the end, it's a decentralized and permissionless network, which is extremely bullish compared to what exists in the competition landscape today.
If anyone's got any other questions, please drop them in the chat now, and we can get them answered. I just want to tag off the back of that and maybe zoom out a little bit. One of the things I had to talk about today was sort of the industry-wide predictions for 2025. And thinking through, we're calling it sort of the year of interop. If we think forward into the future, that we've got this decentralization happening, we have all these routes available. It seems to be changing the game for builders. It's going to change the game for end users. I know this is enabling a lot of new. It almost feels like we've been stuck in this loop until these rails have been built, until this technology is going to become available. So, Peter, I'm interested to hear from you. Like, what are the bigger predictions for this year, given the rollout of this interop and this infrastructure? You're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I was making a meme on Grok. Posting there. Yeah, no. So I mean, I think sort of my biggest prediction is that people want chain abstraction. I think power users love bridges. I still remember back like a few years ago, and I talked about this in the hyperlane space yesterday. Like, I remember people saying like, "You're dumb if you want to move your funds off ETH. Like, ETH is the only place you should have funds. And if you want funds on like Solana or Near or like Tron back in the day, right? Like or BSC, then you have to use like a centralized exchange to get them there safely. So it's like just use XYZ exchange, don't use bridges, right? Because bridges are dangerous. I don't think we're going back there again, right? I think what people don't, I think sometimes realize is that interop as sort of like a transaction route has been growing so heavily, but it's kind of just like behind the scenes and just like works, and it's not sexy, right? Like it's not like new DeFi primitives. It's not like Athena or Pendle or things that are generating you like 15,000% yield. It's just like infrastructure that works behind the scenes and just like executes and powers what you want to do. but it's not super sexy, and that's fine, right? Like infrastructure doesn't have to be sexy. The products that are built on top of SEDA and these different interop programs can be sexy, but I think what we're going to see is all these chain abstraction protocols that are launching, the user experience is like 100x better for retail, right? If you send someone like a universal X, link, or onboard them to One Balance or Kana or whatever it may be, they're immediately having sort of like no knowledge needed experience with crypto. What we're seeing with sort of power users is like, it's becoming faster, right, and easier to get funds between chains. So if you want to bridge, like I don't know, a few years ago, like you might be looking at like a 7-day lockup period. Like I remember, the Ethereum to near bridge, Rainbow Bridge, in the first implementation, I think it was like a 6-day window where you had to wait for funds to get unlocked if you wanted to go back from near to Ethereum. And even still, like up until last year, this route like took like 18 hours or something like that to verify when you went back from near to Ethereum. It's just insane to ask users to wait that long when they're used to things in crypto being so quick and permissionless and easy to access. So I think, my biggest prediction is that we're going to see a ton of really cool applications that use interop rails to build like totally new experiences that weren't possible before. And these will probably be around like trading or, different, sort of ownership primitives. I think also we're going to see the implementation of sort of like TradFi coming a bit closer to crypto. I think one underestimated piece of the stack is like, if I want to get money into crypto, it's pretty simple now, right? Like a lot of rails exist to go from like, fiat world into crypto. To go back, if you want to like pay your rent or you want to, buy a ticket on an airplane or like whatever it may be, the use case, like there aren't that many solutions that like work and are trustless, right? That you can like, use. And I think, one thing that we talked about with the safe team is how can we implement payments from a safe that then can be executed by a real life non-crypto market maker to basically fill that as a broker, send money on behalf of the user, and then have that intent verified using the Swift network back to SEDA and verified back to the safe, which can then be debited. And I think we're going to see some really cool use cases like that actually completely blur the lines between TradFi and DeFi. And I think it's just going to be finance. Like in 2026, you're not going to be saying DeFi. It's just going to be like finance blended, right? Like, and I have my assets like in the bank and I have it in my bank on safe as well, right? Like that's going to be what use there's exactly Fi YG. So I think that's probably my strongest prediction for 2025.
It's like true abstraction, financial abstraction. Forget chain abstraction.
Yeah, it's like ownership abstraction. It's like ownership across the stack. Like your ownership in digital assets is like that. Needing to know how that works or where it is, like you won't need to do that anymore. And I think that's something that still right now hasn't really worked that seamlessly.
Yeah, super exciting. One of the questions we've got is just touching a bit more on the code freeze and the audit process. Is there any other info that we can share at this point about what that looks like? I know you did touch on it in the intro.
Yeah. So I won't provide too much info now just because I know we have like some co-marketing coming out that will explain sort of exactly what we're doing. But I mean, we did a pretty extensive search. We talked to a bunch of different audit firms that specialize in Rust and Go to make sure that we found the best. And I think that we're quite happy with our selection. Last time we used Trail of Bits, which is sort of like one of the industry standard audit firms for code reviews, within crypto today. I think that we found an equally great auditor as well for this upcoming code review. So I'm very excited for that. But yeah, I mean, just basically like the timelines are probably what people want to know the most is like 3-week audit timeline, 2-week for code implementations, and then from there, we'll sort of like begin testing in a testnet format and then getting ready for an upgrade to mainnet, right? So this will probably all kick off sometime in the next, probably 4.5 to 5 weeks. So sometime in like the first week or two of February, and the exact date will be probably announced like within 2 weeks from now when that audit will start.
How does the inflation proposal fit in with that? One of the questions we had was around how can the committee get involved with the governance, with the proposals, with voting? How does that fit in?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we'll be posting more information in about a week and a half from now around that. But basically, we'll be like posting a proposal and then collecting feedback. The actual process for turning on inflation would then be a network governance vote via validators and token holders. So I think yeah, validators can be involved. If you're a validator, if you're delegating to a validator, then they can be involved on your behalf in the vote. And so, yeah, more information will be posted around the actual sort of proposal that we'll submit. And then you can read a bit deeper into what the parameters are and exactly what's going live.
Awesome. YG's asking for some V1 with V1 on the horizon. Can he get some alpha for V2? What does it look like? Is there anything that we can share?
Yeah, I mean, let's get V1 live first and get some traction on it. I think, with V2, I know the engineering team has some like interesting ideas basically on like how we can speed up settlement. So we're targeting like around 15-second settlement right now, which is already like super, super fast for permissionless settlement. I mean, I think that probably that'll be like the next piece that we try to improve on and optimize is like, how do we make that data request process, like the resolution as fast as possible and condense it into the fewest amount of blocks as possible. But yeah, the V2 will probably be like all around optimization and speed, maybe some stuff around MEV as well. But yeah, it'll probably be mostly like performance upgrades, I would say, from there forward.
Nice. Hopefully that gives you something, YG. Does anyone else have any questions before I move on to some community updates? Or Matt, have you got anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
Nothing specific. Keen to hear these community updates as well.
Cool. Yep. So big alpha in the community is that we have a new community program dropping very, very soon. So it's going to be lots of fun. I'll be releasing some info on that. There's a lot of redacted details. You may have seen hints being dropped around the server over the last couple of days. I'm super excited for that. I think it's going to be lots of fun for everyone. It's going to involve a lot of engagement, a lot of interaction, a lot of gamification. So yeah, I don't want to reveal too much just yet, but it's something that's been in the work. I'm super excited to reveal that. I want to get the server pumping. I want to get a lot of the Sedalian army coming together. Look, YG's already dropping a bit of alpha there. So yeah, get ready for that. We've got some exciting new merch in the works. That's something that I've been working on. You might have seen some chatter around basketball, some chatter around soccer jerseys or football jerseys, as most people probably refer to it as. Do bits and pieces. Again, that's going to be revealed as part of this new community program, but some exciting new merch is in the works. Look for getting some feedback and voting. So keep your eyes in the general chat. I'll put some polls up. I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on what we make. And moving on to the intergalactic puzzle, the main prize was claimed by a group of expert solvers, which was awesome to see. We've still got prizes coming for second and third place. There's still plenty of puzzles to be solved. So please jump in, have a go, ask for some hints. There's going to be some new ways to unlock hints with the launch of the new community program as well. We've got new puzzles, new games coming out. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that. Cool. So have Peter, Matt, have you got any other closing thoughts that you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
Just
super excited. Go ahead, Matt.
Sure, love it. Just a couple things on the marketing front. We have Socket tomorrow, so if you want to dive deeper into like SEDA's verification program specifically for chain abstraction, we're diving in with the CEO and founder Vaibhav on that. And then on Friday, unannounced, we'll be jumping on with Particle Network, Orb Labs, Arcana, and Socket to have a chain abstraction anti-FUD campaign. There's been a few hot and spicy takes across crypto Twitter, so we've pulled together the band of anti-FUD chain abstract doors, and we'll be tackling that on Friday. So that's going to be a great conversation. And then we have some other pods coming up with One Balance, Rice Chain as well around pre-confirmations, which is a new topic. So plenty of cool conversations, plenty of big things happening in the marketing front. And yeah, echo Peter's sentiment. Couldn't be more bullish.
Awesome. And we'll wrap up this month with another Dev Blitz update with Jasper and potential mystery dev guest to be confirmed. Thanks for joining, everyone. Again, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them in the chat. So jump in, drop them in the general chat, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Talk soon.